The morning started like any other on New Haven. The colony's twin suns rose over the farming districts, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Lisa Morgan stood at her laboratory window, watching the light spread across the settlement. She was finishing her night shift at the Xenobiology Research Center, tired but satisfied with her work on alien plant samples. Her younger brother Danny would be waking up soon for school. At 14, he was brilliant but stubborn, always arguing about having to study subjects he found boring. Lisa smiled, thinking about their usual morning routine. She would get home just in time to make him breakfast and ensure he actually ate something before rushing off to class. The first sign of trouble was a shadow passing over the suns. Lisa looked up, squinting at the sky. What she saw made her blood run cold. Ships. Hundreds of them. Their crystalline hulls reflected the morning light like broken glass scattered across the heavens. The Krellians had come. Everyone knew about the Krellian Empire. They controlled vast sections of the galaxy, taking what they wanted from weaker species. Earth's military had always said the Krellians wouldn't bother with human colonies. Humans had nothing special to offer. No unique resources. No advanced technology. The experts had been wrong. The attack began without warning. Blue beams of plasma, energy shot down from the ships, cutting through buildings like a hot knife through butter. The colony's defense shields lasted exactly 30 seconds before failing. Lisa watched in horror as the shopping district where she bought groceries disappeared in a flash of light and heat. She ran. Her feet pounded against the floor as she sprinted through the research center, heading for the exit. Other scientists screamed and scattered around her. Some tried to save their research, others just stood frozen in shock. Lisa ignored them all. She had only one thought in her mind. Danny. She had to get to Danny. The school was 3 kilometers away. Lisa had never run so fast in her life. Her lungs burned. Her legs felt like they might give out, but she kept running. Around her, the colony fell apart. Krellian soldiers marched through the streets. They stood 3 meters tall, their gray skin covered in natural armor plates. Their 4 arms moved independently, each holding a different weapon. People tried to fight back. Colonial security forces set up barriers and opened fire with their rifles. The bullets bounced off the Krellians' armor. In response, the aliens didn't even use their weapons. They simply walked forward, grabbed the human defenders and crushed them with their bare hands. Lisa stayed in the shadows, moving from building to building. She saw neighbors she had known for years lying dead in the streets. She saw children crying over their parents' bodies. But she couldn't stop. She couldn't help them. Danny needed her. The school was burning when she arrived. The main building had collapsed, but she could hear voices coming from the gymnasium. She crept closer, staying behind overturned vehicles. What she saw made her stomach twist into knots. Krellian soldiers had gathered all the surviving students in the gym. They were scanning them with some kind of device, a silver rod that glowed purple when pointed at each child. Most of the time the rod stayed dim, but occasionally it would flash bright, and the soldiers would pull that child aside. Danny was in the group waiting to be scanned. Lisa watched, helpless, as the device reached her brother. The purple light exploded like a flare. 2 Krellians immediately grabbed Danny's arms. He struggled, calling out for help, but he might as well have been fighting against mountains. Lisa started to move forward, ready to do something, anything, even though she knew it was hopeless. But then she heard the Krellians speaking. After years of studying alien languages, she understood enough to make out their words. "This one has the markers," one soldier said in their clicking, harsh language. "High neuroplasticity. Perfect for the Consciousness Project." "How many do we need?" another asked. "Command wants at least 1,000 from this world. Young ones process better. Their minds haven't fully formed yet." Lisa felt sick. She knew what they were talking about. She had read the intelligence reports, the rumors from other conquered worlds. The Krellians used alien minds as biological computers. They would take Danny's consciousness, break it apart, and use the pieces to process data for their empire. No one taken for this purpose had ever returned. Most died within months, their minds burned out from the strain. She wanted to scream. She wanted to fight, but she forced herself to think. If she revealed herself now, they would just kill her or take her too. She couldn't save Danny if she was dead. So she watched. She memorized every detail. The transport ship's identification markers, the soldiers' unit insignia, the exact model of scanner they used. Every piece of information burned itself into her memory. The Krellians loaded Danny and 40 other children onto a transport. Her brother looked so small between the massive aliens. His face was pale with fear, but he wasn't crying. He was trying to be brave. That somehow made it worse. The transport lifted off, joining dozens of others rising from across the colony. They disappeared into a massive carrier ship hovering in the lower atmosphere. Lisa stayed hidden until the last Krellian soldier had left the area. Then she stood in the ruins of the school, staring at the sky where her brother had disappeared. Around her, survivors began to emerge from hiding. Some cried. Others stood in shocked silence. A few tried to organize, calling for medical help, searching for family members. Lisa helped where she could, but her mind was elsewhere. She made her way back to the research center. Amazingly, parts of it still stood. Her laboratory had survived mostly intact. She sat at her desk, surrounded by alien biological samples and research notes. On her computer screen, she pulled up everything she had on Krellian physiology, culture, and technology. People would say what happened to Danny was a tragedy. They would mourn, hold memorial services, and eventually move on. The galaxy was vast and cruel, and sometimes bad things happened to good people. That was just how things were. But Lisa wouldn't accept that. She couldn't. She had spent 5 years studying alien biology. She knew more about Krellian physiology than almost any other human scientist. She understood their technology, their culture, their language. All that knowledge had seemed academic before. Interesting, but not particularly useful. Now it would become a weapon. The Krellians thought they could take human children for their consciousness experiments. They thought humans were weak, primitive, barely worth conquering. They had taken her brother, the only family she had left, after their parents died in a mining accident 3 years ago. Lisa looked at the data on her screen. Krellian neural structure, Krellian genetic sequences, Krellian network protocols. Each piece of information was a tool, a potential weakness to exploit. The Empire was vast and powerful, but every system had vulnerabilities. Every species had blind spots. She would find them. She would learn everything there was to know about the Krellians, and then she would use that knowledge to get Danny back. If she had to tear down their entire empire to do it, so be it. The Krellians had made a mistake. They had taken her brother, thinking she was just another helpless human. But Lisa Morgan was far from helpless. She was intelligent, determined, and now she had a purpose that burned hotter than any sun. They had stolen her brother. She would claim their empire in return. The work began that night. While others mourned their losses, Lisa studied. While others called for military intervention that would never come, Lisa planned. She didn't sleep. She didn't cry. She just worked, her fingers flying across keyboards, her mind absorbing every detail about the enemy. The Krellians had won this battle. They had taken what they wanted and left New Haven in ruins, but Lisa knew something they didn't. The war had just begun, and she would be the one to end it. 6 months had passed since the attack on New Haven. Lisa Morgan looked at herself in the mirror and barely recognized the person staring back. Her skin had a faint gray tint now, the result of careful genetic modification. Small bone ridges ran along her jaw and forehead, subtle enough to pass for mixed heritage but visible enough to be noticed. Her eyes had changed from brown to the pale yellow common among Krellians. The transformation had taken months of painful procedures, all performed by herself in a hidden laboratory she had built in the ruins of New Haven. She had used stolen, Krellian medical equipment, bought from black market dealers who asked no questions if the price was right. Every injection, every genetic alteration, every surgical modification had been agony. But pain meant nothing compared to her purpose. She had created a new identity for herself. According to the forged documents in the Krellian database, she was Lyrica, the offspring of a Krellian soldier and a Tyrellian slave. Such half-breeds were rare but not impossible. They occupied a strange place in the Empire's hierarchy, not quite slaves but never truly citizens. Perfect for someone who needed to be invisible while staying visible. The slavers' ship arrived at New Haven right on schedule. Lisa had tracked their routes for weeks, knowing they would come to scavenge whatever the military had left behind. She positioned herself perfectly, pretending to repair a water purification system in a ruined building they would search. The slavers found her within minutes. 3 Krellians entered the building, their weapons raised. Lisa played her part flawlessly. She cowered, spoke in broken Krellian, and offered no resistance when they bound her hands. One of them scanned her with a device similar to the one used on Danny. It confirmed her modified genetics, showing exactly what she wanted them to see. Half-breed, one slaver grunted. Might be worth something if she has useful skills. Lisa kept her eyes down, acting terrified. Inside, she felt only cold satisfaction. The first step of her plan was working. The slave ship was exactly as horrible as she had expected. Hundreds of beings from different species crowded into cages barely large enough to stand in. The air smelled of fear, waste, and despair. Lisa memorized every face, every species, every detail of suffering. Each moment added fuel to the fire of her determination. During the journey to the slave markets, she made herself useful. She fixed a malfunctioning food dispenser. She repaired a broken cage lock. She diagnosed an illness spreading among the Altarian prisoners. The slavers noticed. By the time they reached the markets of Krelvox, they were advertising her as a skilled technician. The auction was degrading. Lisa stood on a platform while buyers examined her like livestock. They checked her teeth, tested her reflexes, and questioned her about her abilities. She answered in the submissive tone expected of slaves, all while memorizing everything about Krellian social structure and behavior. Vorthresh bought her for a price that was neither insultingly low nor suspiciously high. He was a minor noble, she had learned, in charge of a data processing facility on the industrial moon of Kreldar. Exactly the type of facility she needed to infiltrate. The facility was a nightmare made real. Massive towers of organic computers stretched toward the ceiling, each one containing hundreds of consciousness fragments from conquered species. The screaming was the worst part. Not physical screaming, but psychic noise from tortured minds forced to process endless streams of data. Lisa had to use all her mental discipline to avoid breaking down when she first felt it. She found Danny's signature on her 3rd week there. His consciousness was trapped in Tower 7, Section 4, Node 231. She couldn't free him yet. Any attempt would trigger alarms and destroy her cover, but knowing he was alive gave her strength to continue. Vorthresh was arrogant and stupid, the product of generations of privilege. He barely paid attention to what Lisa did as long as the facility's efficiency improved, and improve it did. She repaired systems that had been malfunctioning for years. She optimized data flow patterns. She increased processing speed by 30%. But for every improvement she made openly, she created 2 hidden vulnerabilities. She installed backdoors in security systems. She copied access codes and passwords. She mapped the entire network architecture of the facility. Most importantly, she discovered how the consciousness extraction process worked. The Krellians used a quantum entanglement process to link organic minds to their computer networks. The conscious mind was separated from the physical brain and trapped in a crystalline matrix. The process was considered irreversible, but Lisa found flaws in their assumptions. The Krellians didn't fully understand human neural plasticity. With the right sequence of quantum pulses, she could theoretically restore the connection between mind and body. 4 months into her enslavement, Lisa made a crucial discovery. She had been repairing a damaged console when she found old system logs from the facility's construction. The entire Krellian data network was connected through quantum-entangled nodes. Every facility, every ship, every government building shared the same underlying infrastructure, and at the center of it all was the prime node on Krell Prime, the Empire's capital. The implications were staggering. If someone could access the prime node, they would have control over every connected system in the Empire. The Krellians had built their entire civilization on a single point of failure, protected only by their absolute confidence that no other species could understand their technology well enough to exploit it. Lisa began planning her next move. She needed to get to Krell Prime, but a slave couldn't simply travel there. She needed to become valuable enough that they would take her there themselves. The opportunity came when a critical system failure threatened to destroy the entire facility. A power surge had damaged the primary consciousness matrix, and if it failed completely, thousands of extracted minds would be lost. The Krellian technicians panicked, having no idea how to fix such complex damage. Lisa stepped forward, speaking in perfect Krellian for the first time. She told Vorthresh she could repair the system, but she needed full access to do it. The noble had no choice. The loss of the facility would mean his execution. She worked for 18 hours straight, partly repairing the system and partly ensuring that only she would know how to maintain it. When she finished, the facility was running better than ever, but it now required her specific knowledge to keep functioning. Vorthresh was both furious and impressed. A half-breed slave had shown more competence than his entire technical staff. Word of the incident spread through the Krellian bureaucracy. Within days, Lisa received a new assignment. She was to be transferred to Krell Prime to work in the WAM technical sanctum where the Empire's most critical systems were maintained. Before leaving, Lisa managed one small act of mercy. She couldn't free Danny or the other consciousness fragments without destroying her cover. But she could ease their suffering. She modified the extraction parameters slightly, reducing the psychic pressure on the trapped minds. It wasn't freedom, but it would keep them sane a little longer, long enough for her to complete her mission. The transport to Krell Prime took 3 weeks. Lisa spent every moment studying, planning, preparing. She analyzed every piece of data she had collected. She ran through scenarios in her mind. She practiced writing code that looked like optimization but was actually a weapon waiting to be deployed. The other slaves on the transport whispered about her, the half-breed who had earned a position on the capital world. Some were jealous, others were suspicious. But most were simply amazed that anyone could rise so far from such a low position. They didn't understand that Lisa wasn't rising. She was infiltrating. Every step up the hierarchy was a step closer to her goal. When the transport finally arrived, at Krell Prime, Lisa got her first view of the Empire's heart. The planet was entirely covered in city, layers upon layers of buildings reaching into the atmosphere. The technical sanctum stood at the center, a massive spire that touched the edge of space. Somewhere in that building was the prime node, the key to everything. As she was processed and assigned quarters, Lisa thought of Danny. She thought of all the children taken from New Haven. She thought of every species enslaved by the Krellians. She thought of the countless minds trapped in digital prisons. The Krellians believed they were invincible. They believed their empire would last forever. They were about to learn how wrong they were. A human had infiltrated their most sacred institution. A sister's love had become a weapon pointed at their heart. The real work was about to begin. The technical sanctum of Krell Prime was the most secure building in the Empire. Every door required genetic scanning. Every corridor had guards. Every computer system monitored for unauthorized access. Lisa navigated it all with practiced ease, her modified appearance and forged credentials opening doors that no human had ever passed through. Her workspace was deep in the building's core, surrounded by the Empire's most critical systems. The other technicians, all pure-blooded Krellians, initially treated her with contempt. A half-breed working in their sacred halls was an insult to their pride, but that contempt turned to grudging respect when they saw her work. Lisa fixed problems that had puzzled them for years. She optimized systems they thought were already perfect. She wrote code that was elegant, efficient, and contained hidden functions they never noticed. Each success earned her more access, more trust, and more importantly, more information about the prime node. The node itself was located in the highest level of the sanctum, protected by security that seemed impossible to breach. Only the royal family and their most trusted advisors could enter the chamber. The door required a genetic key encoded in royal DNA. Armed guards stood watch every hour of every day. Any unauthorized person approaching would trigger alarms throughout the planet. But Lisa had learned patience in the months since Danny was taken. She didn't need to rush. Every day she gathered more information. Every night she refined her plan. She studied the royal family's genetics through medical databases. She analyzed the guard rotation patterns. She mapped every security system, every alarm, every possible obstacle. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. While repairing a climate control system, Lisa discovered old maintenance tunnels that ran throughout the sanctum. They had been sealed centuries ago when newer systems were installed, but the tunnels themselves still existed. More importantly, one tunnel passed within meters of the prime node chamber. Lisa spent weeks secretly clearing the tunnel, working at night when the building was nearly empty. She disabled the few remaining sensors without triggering alerts. She created hidden caches of equipment she would need, all while maintaining her cover as the brilliant half-breed technician who kept the Empire's systems running smoothly. The genetic key problem required more creativity. Lisa couldn't get a sample from the royal family directly, but she found another way. The Sanctum's medical facility kept genetic records of every person who had ever worked there. Going back through centuries of data, she found what she needed. A royal cousin, dead for 50 years, whose genetic markers were still in the system. Close enough to the main family line that, with careful modification, she could synthesize a key that would work. Creating the key took months of secret work. She used equipment from the medical labs, stealing small amounts of materials that wouldn't be missed. She tested each attempt on isolated door sensors she had removed for maintenance. Failure after failure taught her more about Krellian genetic encoding. Finally, after 47 attempts, she had a key that worked. The virus was her masterpiece. Lisa had spent every free moment writing and refining it. On the surface, it looked like a standard optimization program. But hidden in its code was something far more ambitious. It would spread through the quantum-entangled network instantly, affecting every connected Krellian mind simultaneously. The virus wouldn't kill or harm. Lisa wasn't interested in genocide. Instead, it would rewrite the fundamental neural pathways that governed Krellian behavior. Their aggression would become protectiveness. Their need to dominate would transform into a desire to serve. Their contempt for other species would flip into deep respect and admiration. They would still be themselves, but their core drives would be completely reversed. She tested the virus on isolated Krellian neural tissue samples, watching as it rewrote synaptic patterns exactly as designed. The changes were permanent and irreversible. Once infected, a Krellian mind could never return to its original state. The Festival of Convergence provided the perfect opportunity. For 3 days, every Krellian in the Empire would be connected through the network in a massive celebration of their species' superiority. The entire population would be vulnerable to the virus at once. Lisa had been preparing for this moment for over a year. On the first night of the festival, she made her move. The sanctum was nearly empty, with most staff participating in celebrations elsewhere. Lisa entered the maintenance tunnel she had prepared, carrying the equipment she needed. Her heart pounded as she crawled through the narrow space, but her hands remained steady. The tunnel ended at a wall she had carefully weakened over many nights. She pushed through it into a storage room adjacent to the prime node chamber. From there, she could hear the guards talking outside, complaining about missing the festival. Lisa had prepared for the guards. Using her knowledge of Krellian biology, she had created a gas that would render them unconscious in seconds. It was tailored specifically to their physiology and would have no effect on her modified human system. She released it through the ventilation system and waited. The guards dropped within 30 seconds. Lisa stepped over their unconscious bodies and approached the prime node chamber's door. This was the moment of greatest risk. If the genetic key didn't work, if she had made any mistake, alarms would sound and her mission would end. She pressed the synthesized key to the scanner. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then, with a soft hiss, the door opened. The prime node chamber was beautiful and terrible. A massive crystal structure dominated the room, pulsing with energy that connected every corner of the Empire. Streams of data flowed through it like rivers of light. This single object controlled trillions of minds across thousands of worlds. Lisa connected her equipment to the node's interface. The security systems immediately challenged her presence, but she had prepared for this too. She fed them false credentials, codes she had stolen and modified over months of careful observation. One by one, the security barriers fell. Finally, she had full access. The entire Krellian network spread out before her in her mind's eye. She could see every connected consciousness, every system, every piece of the vast empire. And there, still trapped in the facility where she had left him, was Danny's mental signature. Lisa uploaded the virus. It spread faster than thought, racing through quantum-entangled connections to every corner of Krellian space. Within nanoseconds, it had infected millions of minds. Within seconds, billions. The celebrating Krellians never knew what hit them. Their minds were rewritten between one heartbeat and the next. But Lisa wasn't done. As the virus spread, she used her access to issue commands throughout the empire. Every slave collar deactivated, every prison opened, every consciousness extraction facility began the process of returning stolen minds to their bodies. She programmed medical systems to begin producing the treatments needed to heal the damage done to extracted minds. An alarm finally sounded as someone noticed the unconscious guards. Security forces rushed toward the prime node chamber. Lisa could hear them coming, their boots thundering through the corridors. But it was too late. The virus had already infected them too. They arrived at the chamber not to arrest her, but to ask how they could serve. Lisa looked at them. These massive warriors who had terrorized the galaxy for centuries. They stood there, confused by their own thoughts, overwhelmed by new compulsions. They didn't understand. She felt no pity. They had chosen to build their empire on the suffering of others. Now they would spend the rest of their lives trying to undo that damage. She turned back to the prime node and began the next phase of her plan. The virus had rewritten Krellian minds, but the empire's structure remained. That needed to change, too. She issued new directives, reorganizing the government, the military, the entire social order. The empire would become a cooperative federation. The Krellians would serve rather than rule. As she worked, Lisa established herself as the primary authority in the new neural patterns, not as a dictator or empress, but as a guide. The Krellians would feel compelled to follow her suggestions, to seek her approval, to work toward the goals she set. They would still have free will in most things, but they could never again become what they had been. Hours passed. Reports flooded in from across the empire. Confused Krellian officers were releasing prisoners. Slave masters were freeing their property and begging forgiveness. The military was standing down from dozens of active conquests. The transformation was complete and irreversible. Lisa finally stepped away from the prime node. She was exhausted, drained from the mental effort of reshaping an entire civilization. But she wasn't done. There was still one more thing she needed to do. She sent a command to the facility where Danny was held. Begin the restoration process for consciousness. Fragment designation Danny Morgan. Priority 1. Allocate all necessary resources. Then she sat down on the floor of the chamber and finally allowed herself to cry. She had done it. She had brought the Krellian Empire to its knees, not through military might or political maneuvering, but through careful planning and scientific knowledge. They had taken her brother. She had taken everything from them in return. The guards, still confused by their transformed minds, asked if she needed anything. Lisa looked up at them, these former symbols of. The transformation of the Krellian Empire happened in a single night, but its effects rippled across the galaxy for weeks. Lisa stood in the command center of the technical sanctum, watching hundreds of screens showing the chaos and confusion spreading through Krellian space, ships returning to port, weapons powering down, slaves walking free for the first time in their lives. The Krellian military commanders were the first to fully understand what had happened to them. General Karvas, supreme commander of the Empire's forces, arrived at the sanctum within hours of the transformation. He was a massive creature, 4 meters tall, covered in battle scars from 100 campaigns. He had personally ordered the destruction of dozen worlds. Now he stood before Lisa, tears streaming from his 4 eyes. "What have you done to us?" he asked, his voice breaking. "I can feel every death I've caused, every child I've orphaned, every life I've destroyed. The weight of it is crushing me, but I can't stop feeling it. I want to make amends, but how can I? How can anyone forgive what I've done?" Lisa looked at him without sympathy. "You can't undo the past, General. But you can work to prevent anyone else from suffering as your victims did. Your fleet will become a peacekeeping force. Your soldiers will protect the weak instead of conquering them. That is your penance." The general nodded, accepting his fate. He turned to his subordinates who had accompanied him. "Issue orders to all units. We are no longer conquerors, we are protectors. Any soldier who refuses will be relieved of duty." None refused. They couldn't. The virus made it impossible for them to return to their old ways. The noble houses tried to resist at first. They gathered in the Imperial Palace, demanding that their scientists find a cure for whatever had infected them. Lord Vorthresh was among them, the same noble who had owned Lisa as a slave. He recognized her when she entered the palace, his eyes widening in shock. "You," he gasped. "The half-breed technician. This is your doing?" "I'm not a half-breed," Lisa replied calmly. "I'm fully human, the same species you considered so inferior that you used our children's minds as computer components. How does it feel, Lord Vorthresh, to know that a mere human has destroyed everything you believed in?" The nobles raged and threatened, but their own minds betrayed them. When they tried to order their guards to attack Lisa, the guards refused. When they attempted to access weapon systems, they found themselves physically unable to complete the action. The virus had hard-coded protections against violence toward other species. Some nobles chose death rather than live with their new compulsions. They gathered in their chambers and attempted ritual suicide, as was traditional for defeated Krellian leaders. But even this was denied to them. The virus included safeguards against self-harm. They were forced to live with their guilt, to feel the weight of their crimes every moment of every day. Lisa appeared on every communication channel in the Empire, her message reaching billions of Krellians and trillions of enslaved beings. She spoke clearly and simply, explaining what had happened and what would happen next. "The Krellian Empire as you knew it is dead," she announced. "In its place, a new federation will rise. Every species will have equal representation. Every world will have autonomy. The technology and resources that the Krellians hoarded will be shared freely. This is not negotiable. This is not temporary. This is the new reality." The reaction from enslaved species was mixed. Some celebrated immediately, dancing in the streets as their collars fell away. Others remained suspicious, unable to believe that their oppression had truly ended. Many were simply confused, not understanding how their masters had changed so completely overnight. On the mining world of Treya, human slaves emerged from underground tunnels they hadn't left in years. The Krellian overseers who had whipped them to work harder now knelt before them, begging forgiveness. The humans didn't know how to respond. Generations of hatred couldn't disappear overnight, even if their oppressors had genuinely changed. Lisa understood this. She began broadcasting educational programs, teaching former slaves about the virus and its effects. She showed them brain scans proving that the Krellians' transformation was real and permanent. She established rehabilitation centers where former slaves could receive medical treatment and psychological support. The consciousness extraction facilities were the most complex challenge. Thousands of minds remained trapped in digital prisons, their original bodies long dead. Lisa worked with teams of scientists from multiple species to develop new solutions. They grew clone bodies for those whose originals were gone. They created mechanical frames for those who preferred not to return to biological form. Every trapped consciousness was given a choice about their future. Danny's restoration took 3 weeks. Lisa supervised the process personally, watching as his fragmented consciousness was slowly pieced back together. When he finally woke in his cloned body, she was there beside him. Lisa? He whispered, his voice hoarse from disuse. Is it really you? I thought I was dreaming. I thought I was still in that place. She held him as he cried as he remembered the months of digital imprisonment. She explained everything that had happened, how she had transformed herself, infiltrated the Empire, and brought it down from within. Danny listened in amazement, unable to reconcile the sister he remembered with the revolutionary who had toppled a galactic empire. You did all this for me? He asked. I did it for everyone, Lisa replied. But yes, it started with you. They took my little brother. I couldn't let that stand. The transformation of Krellian space continued at breathtaking speed. Former slave. Worlds held elections for the first time. Trade routes reopened between species that had been forbidden contact. Scientific knowledge that had been classified for centuries was released to all. But not everyone was happy with the new order. Several human colonies wanted to exact revenge on the Krellians, to make them suffer as humanity had suffered. They demanded that Lisa use her control to punish their former oppressors more harshly. Lisa refused. She appeared before the Colonial Council via hologram, addressing their demands directly. I understand your anger, she said. The Krellians took our children, destroyed our colonies, and enslaved our people. But look at them now. They wake every day with the full weight of their crimes on their conscience. They will spend the rest of their lives trying to atone for what they did. Isn't that punishment enough? They deserve death, one counselor shouted. Perhaps, Lisa agreed. But death would end their suffering, living with full knowledge of their evil, working every day to undo the damage they caused. That is true justice. Besides, we need them. Their technology, their knowledge, their resources. Used properly, these things can benefit everyone. It took time, but gradually the former slaves began to accept the new reality. They saw Krellian doctors working tirelessly to heal injuries the Krellians themselves had caused. They watched Krellian engineers rebuilding destroyed colonies with their own hands. They witnessed former slave masters teaching their language and technology to those they had once oppressed. The virus had done more than change behavior. It had fundamentally altered how Krellians saw the universe. Where they once saw inferior species to be exploited, they now saw equals deserving of respect. Where they once felt pride in conquest, they now felt shame for their past actions. The empire built on domination had become a federation built on cooperation. 3 months after the transformation, Lisa called a gathering of representatives from every species in former Krellian space. The meeting was held on Krell Prime, in the same hall where the Emperor had once proclaimed new conquests. Now it would be the birthplace of something new. Humans, Altarians, Terrellians, and dozens of other species sat alongside Krellians at the same table. It should have been impossible. Centuries of hatred should have made such cooperation unthinkable. But the transformed Krellians were so eager to make amends, so desperate to prove their change was real, that they accepted any terms offered. Lisa stood before the assembly, no longer disguised as a half-breed slave but revealed as fully human. She had become the most powerful person in the galaxy, not through military might or political authority, but through the careful application of scientific knowledge and an unbreakable will. We stand at a crossroads, she told the assembly. We can choose to remain trapped by the past, defined by old hatreds and grievances. Or we can choose to build something new, something better. The Krellians have been changed at their very core. They cannot return to what they were. The question is, what will we all become together? The debate lasted days. Some species wanted the Krellians stripped of all technology and confined to their homeworld. Others wanted to divide the Empire's resources among the former slaves. But eventually, guided by Lisa's steady hand and the Krellians' genuine desire to reform, they reached an agreement. The new federation would have no single ruler. Instead, a council with representatives from every member species would make decisions collectively. The Krellians would share all their technology freely. Former slave species would receive reparations to rebuild their worlds. And Lisa would serve as a special advisor, ensuring the Krellians' transformation remained permanent and complete. 1 year had passed since the night Lisa Morgan rewrote the minds of an entire species. The former throne room of the Krellian Empire had been converted into the Federation Council chamber, where representatives from 93 different species now gathered. The massive throne that had once dominated the room had been removed, replaced by a circular table that put every representative on equal footing. Lisa stood at one of the chamber's windows, looking out at the transformed capital city. Where military parades had once marched, markets now flourished with goods from across the galaxy. Where slave processing centers had stood, medical facilities now treated beings of all species free of charge. The Krellians walked among other species not as conquerors but as equals, many still struggling with the weight of their transformation. Danny joined her at the window. He had recovered remarkably well from his ordeal, though he still sometimes woke screaming from nightmares of digital imprisonment. He worked with Lisa now, helping other recovered consciousness fragments rebuild their lives. The Altarian delegation wants to discuss mining rights in the outer sectors, he said, handing her a data pad. And the Tyrellians are requesting more medical supplies for their rebuilt colonies. Lisa smiled at how naturally her brother had taken to diplomatic work. Schedule them for this afternoon. Make sure the Krellian resource minister attends both meetings. They need to see the Krellians actively helping. The transformation hadn't been without problems. Many Krellians struggled with severe depression, unable to cope with the guilt their new neural patterns forced them to feel. Suicide prevention had become a major concern, with thousands of counseling centers established to help Krellians process their emotions. The virus prevented them from harming themselves directly, but it couldn't stop them from simply giving up on life. Lisa had established a special rehabilitation program for the most affected Krellians. They were given meaningful work helping their former victims, allowing them to channel their guilt into positive action. It wasn't perfect, but it helped. Many former slaves found it therapeutic to see their oppressors genuinely struggling with remorse. The military conversion had been remarkably successful. Krellian fleets that had once spread terror now served as rapid response units for natural disasters and pirate attacks. General Carvos had become something of a hero to many smaller species, personally leading rescue missions to worlds threatened by cosmic phenomena or aggressive non-Federation species. The general entered the chamber, now his massive form moving carefully to avoid intimidating the smaller beings around him. He approached Lisa with a report from the frontier. "We've encountered a new species beyond the Veil Nebula," he said. "They're pre-space flight, but showing signs of rapid technological development. Under the old empire, we would have conquered them before they became a threat. Now I seek your guidance on how to proceed." Lisa reviewed the data. The new species, tentatively called the Zorvans, had achieved nuclear power and were beginning to experiment with quantum mechanics. First, contact would need to be handled carefully. "Establish a monitoring station at a safe distance," she instructed. "No contact until they achieve faster-than-light travel on their own. When they do, we greet them as equals and offer them membership in the Federation. Make sure they understand that joining is voluntary." The general nodded and left to carry out her orders. It still amazed Lisa sometimes that this massive warrior, who had once destroyed entire civilizations, now followed her suggestions without question. The virus had done its work well. A commotion at the chamber entrance drew her attention. A group of human colonists from New Haven had arrived, led by Governor Patricia Wade. They had come to see what Lisa had built from the ashes of their destroyed colony. "Lisa Morgan," the governor said, her voice filled with mixed emotions. "When you disappeared after the attack, we thought you were dead. To find out you were behind all this," she gestured at the transformed capital around them. "I did what needed to be done," Lisa replied simply. "You violated the consciousness of an entire species," one of the colonists accused. "How is what you did different from what they did to us?" Lisa had faced this question many times over the past year. "The Krellians took innocent minds and broke them for profit. I took guilty minds and made them incapable of further evil. They destroyed consciousness. I transformed it. If that makes me a monster in some people's eyes, I can live with that." The philosophical debates about her actions would probably continue for generations. Some praised her as a hero who had liberated trillions. Others condemned her as a tyrant who had imposed her will on an entire species. Lisa didn't care about history's judgment. She cared about results, and the results were undeniable. In 1 year, the Federation had accomplished more for galactic peace than centuries of diplomacy had achieved. Former slave worlds were rebuilding, with Krellian technology and resources. Scientific knowledge was advancing at an unprecedented rate as barriers between species disappeared. Trade flourished without the threat of conquest. The consciousness extraction facilities had all been shut down, their victims either restored or given new forms of existence. Danny had helped design the memorial sites that now stood where the facilities had been, honoring those who couldn't be saved. The Krellians visited these memorials regularly, compelled by their transformed nature to remember their crimes. Lord Vorthresh approached Lisa during the afternoon sessions. He had lost significant weight over the past year, the stress of his transformation taking a physical toll. He had personally overseen the return of all his former slaves to their homeworlds, spending his entire fortune on reparations. "I've come to make a request," he said, his voice humble in a way it never could have been before. "I wish to travel to the worlds I helped conquer, to work with my own hands to rebuild what I destroyed. Will you permit this?" Lisa studied him. The arrogant noble who had once owned her was gone, replaced by someone genuinely seeking redemption. "You understand that many will not forgive you, that some might attack you despite your transformation? I understand, but I must try. Every day I remain here in comfort is agony, knowing what suffering I caused. Please let me do something meaningful with what remains of my life." She approved his request. Many Krellians were making similar journeys, seeking forgiveness they might never receive but needing to try anyway. It was part of their new nature, the compulsion to make amends that the virus had embedded in their minds. As the day's sessions concluded, Lisa received a priority message from the frontier. A massive fleet of unknown configuration had been detected approaching Federation space. Initial scans suggested technology far beyond anything in the Federation's arsenal. First contact protocols were being initiated, but the Federation military was on high alert. Lisa called an emergency council session. Representatives from all member species gathered quickly, their faces showing concern. The last time an unknown fleet had appeared, it had been the Krellians themselves, centuries ago. Now something potentially more powerful was approaching. "We need to present a united front," Lisa told the council. "If they're hostile, we need to show them that attacking one of us means fighting all of us. If they're peaceful, we need to demonstrate that we're a stable civilization worth trading with." The Krellian military leaders immediately offered to position their fleets as the first line of defense. It was a remarkable moment, former conquerors volunteering to sacrifice themselves to protect their former slaves. The offer was accepted, though ships from all member species would support them. As the Federation prepared for potential first contact, Lisa reflected on how far they had all come. A year ago, she had been a grieving sister with nothing but rage and determination. Now she stood at the center of the most powerful political entity in known space, not as a ruler but as a guide and protector. The approaching fleet sent a transmission in multiple languages, including several Federation dialects. The message was simple. "We are the Ethereal Collective. We have watched your transformation with interest. We come in peace to evaluate your Federation for potential trade and cultural exchange." The relief in the chamber was palpable. This wasn't an invasion, but an opportunity. The transformation of the Krellian Empire had caught the attention of civilizations beyond known space. They wanted to understand how such a complete reversal of an entire species' nature was possible. Lisa knew this was just the beginning. The Federation would grow, encounter new challenges, face threats both external and internal. But they would face them together, united in a way that would have been impossible under the old empire. As she stood before the council, preparing to lead negotiations with the Ethereal Collective, Lisa thought of the journey that had brought her here. They had stolen her brother, thinking humans were weak and expendable. She had claimed their empire in return, proving that humans possess something far more powerful than physical strength or advanced technology. They possessed the will to do whatever was necessary to protect those they loved. They possessed the intelligence to turn any situation to their advantage. And they possessed the wisdom to know that true victory wasn't in destroying your enemies, but in transforming them into allies.